Hey, good morning, everybody. I see we got folks joining already. We are going to give another minute or two just for folks to get on and get all set. So we'll start at precisely 11:31. So stay tuned. All right, great. It looks like we've got just about everybody that's registered on the call now. So good turnout. Good to see everybody here. Thanks for joining us this morning. I'm John Robertson. I'm communication specialist at the foundation, and we have just a quick housekeeping slide to run through before we get started. Um, as we progress through, feel free to use the Q&A function at the lower part of your screen. Drop any questions in there. We will have a separate time for Q&A, so you're welcome to use the raise hand feature at that point as well, and be able to ask your questions verbally. We will have a recording and some other resources to send out following this presentation. So be on the lookout for an email from Jill. And with that, I will hand it over to Senior Program Officer Howard Brown to get us started.
Hey, thanks, John, and good morning and welcome, everyone. I have the honor to work alongside a super talented and dedicated team, and many of them are here today. So I just want to acknowledge the team, program officers Aisha Cooper and Dr. Craig Kalistra. We also have grant writer Chris Worsbowski, and the newest member of our team, grants manager Jill Kaufman. Please give a warm Zoom welcome to Jill. The fact that you're all here today is the product of some of Jill's great work here at the foundation, and we're really looking forward to hopefully years and years of more work to come. So thanks, Jill, and you'll hear from Jill a little later in the presentation. Before we get started, as you know, over the past 2 years, the foundation has been working to refine the way we look at impact measurement. And today, we're pleased to share some, in a little greater detail, some more about the grant making results framework that was launched for the first time last fall and was presented to you on a pretty high level last winter. Over that same time period, we've done a lot of Zooming. So we've had a lot less frequent opportunities to connect with you in person. And while we really long to return safely to connect with you, we shouldn't forget some of the ways that we have learned to leverage technology to bring us closer together. And one of those ways is to do some fun things in the chat. So if you would be so kind, please share your name, your organization, and your favorite board game in the chat at this time. Your favorite board game. So my favorite board game has always been Monopoly. I used to have some friends that were on my basketball team that I played Monopoly with, and I would love the opportunity to send my good friend who was number 8 on the basketball court. This is probably bad to say, but I'd send him to Section 8, and I would let him know that once he went bankrupt, I took all his property, and he was officially number 8, Section 8. But we see some Trivial Pursuit, really cool. Some other Monopoly fans, it's great. Ticket to Ride, I'm looking forward to playing that one. And Sushi Go, okay. Looks like we'll have to get together soon and play some of these cool board games. Definitely a highlight, playing games with family and friends during COVID. So thank you. Really appreciate you participating in that. And also just want to keep in mind, now that we are experiencing the lifting of some of the COVID restrictions, we know there'll be opportunities to move back to in-person meetings soon. And while that does, inherently offer the opportunity for human connection, which is, super healthy. Let's also continue to look for opportunities to provide safe spaces, not only physically, but also social and emotionally. And I've learned a lot of techniques from many of you who are on this call today. So I look forward to, even though things could pick up and get super busy again and having us trying to be everywhere at once, let's definitely continue to, appreciate what we learned over this time in our time together in meetings. So we realize you could have been anywhere else in the world. I'm going to stop talking because you chose to spend your time here with us today to learn a little bit more about the results framework. So just wanted to appreciate and acknowledge you for doing that. And also just want to thank you for your commitment to serve our community. And now it's my sincere pleasure to introduce the founder and president of Community Impact Consultants, a philanthropic impact subject matter expert with more than 20 years of experience designing and implementing philanthropic and social impact initiatives, our friend, Michelle DeSabato.
Thanks, Howard. I'm really gonna have to change my bio. It makes me feel old. Let me share my screen. Good morning, everybody. So as Howard said, we're going to go into a little bit more detail than we did in our last session together. And first set the stage about what this shift to results focused investing means, not only for the foundation, for the funder, but also for you, their partners or potential partners. We'll go into their specific framework. And then the part that you really hopefully will get the most benefit from is showing you how to align your work with the framework through the application process. We'll have some natural pauses in there. As John said, use the Q&A. We will have a dedicated time at the end to go through Q&A, but we'll monitor it throughout. I'm going to come off a video so that your focus is on the content and not my waving hands as I talk. But again, this is about you guys getting what you need. So let's jump into the content. So the shift from results focused investing, what does that mean? What are we talking about? And some of this you may have heard us talk about a little bit before, but a traditional foundation or a traditional giver looks for nonprofits whose programs and their mission align with the foundation's mission. Still important, but a results-focused investor goes a bit deeper. They want to invest instead of give, because we want to invest in social change and social impact. We want to invest in nonprofits and programs that are contributing to our desired end state or the foundation's desired end state for their programs, which we'll share with you as we share their framework. A traditional giver usually asks a bunch of narrative-based open-ended questions. Tell us about your program activities and your outcomes, which are usually more outputs: number of meals served, number of butts in a seat for an education class, versus really where the results-focused investor is going is thinking about behavioral change by them clearly identifying indicators they seek to monitor towards their desired end state, towards their desired impact. And again, we'll get really granular into what that means, but we're looking for behavior or conditional changes so that we can roll up and talk about overall impact of investments as a results-focused investor. A traditional giver usually kind of did the compliance check when reviewing applications. Is it complete? Is it clear? Are the descriptive questions really answered to the best extent of the organization? A results-focused investor, while still reading all of that and wanting to make sure all that's clear, is really going in with this investor mindset, the risk and return of an investment, or the ROI, as some people call it, of an investment. So they want to know through the answers to your questions, the narrative questions plus data, the indicators that we mentioned above, 4 critical questions. Who are you impacting? What impact are you going to have on them? How are you going to get there? What are the critical elements to your success? And most importantly, when will you know you're succeeded? It's great to have a plan, but you need some kind of verification method to see that you're on track to get to that stated impact. And we'll go through each of these as we go through aligning your work with the application. And finally, a traditional giver usually, and again, this is not indicative of Pottstown, but they usually just ask for a final grant report saying, hey, tell us what you did. Then they weren't able to roll up their data, but more importantly, they weren't there supporting you. And I know this is not indicative of Pottstown because they do things differently. This is a more general view into this, but a results-focused investor is there to partner with you, to check in throughout the grant term so that if you're not on track, how can they support you to get back on track, to learn what's working and what's not? Because after all, measurement, that's what it's about. It's about the learning versus just the numbers and the data. We need to know what's working so that we can expand into the field. So if we take all of these things and we want to see a more concrete fictitious example of what this means, it's about talking about investments instead of talking about the activities we funded and focusing on the results or the impact of funding. So in this fictitious example, you can see here, a traditional giver would talk about, hey, we gave $15,000 to our local food bank. And with that, they're going to do all this activity. They're going to conduct 10 nutrition classes for up to 500 low-income families over a 10-week period. For me, there's a lot happening in there. There's a lot of movement, but I don't know what's different for those 500 families. The results-focused investor talks about it this way. Hey, we invested that same $15,000 to empower 430 out of the 500 families to achieve this, to achieve sustaining a healthy diet on a budget and adopting a healthy lifestyle for a period of 3 months. So we know how many, we know what's different for them, and we stayed with them for a little bit. Again, fictitious example, we put a time frame out there because a food bank probably won't stay with families for an extended period of time because they can't. But you can see the difference. Activities, a lot happening on the left, achievement on the right. So what we're hoping is by us kind of making this clarity, it's much easier for you, their potential partners, to understand what they're up to, what they want to fund, and see an alignment of your program with their desired impact and even their indicators as we go into that in a little bit. Hopefully, you'll notice as if you are awarded a grant, that it also enables us to streamline and focus the reporting process. As I said a minute ago, it's about making sure you're on track, learning where you are, what's working, what's not, and helping you throughout the grant cycle. We hope that it also builds your capacity to define, track, and achieve results by asking questions of yourselves. How do we define success? How do we know for sure when that's been achieved, that verification method? And making sure that you're able to monitor the funds so that you have enough time and money left to get to the success you defined. Overall, we hope this creates a higher dialogue between you and the foundation, and again, gets us to that learning what worked about in your program to get these results. How can we make sure that other programs learn from you? So it's about learning. Now, as we set the stage and hopefully gave you some grounding into that shift and what the foundation is up to, let's talk about their specific work, their specific framework, and what they're interested in investing in. So if we start here with their purpose and mission, many of you that have been partners with the foundation probably see this and look quickly and say, hey, they're still doing the same thing. What I want to call out is we've had a lot of discussions given what's going on in the world, given where the foundation sits. We really, if you read them closely, are focusing now on making sure that we're, embracing a healthy lifestyle for all community members, but we want to make sure that concept of equity is embedded into all we do. So equal opportunities, equitable opportunities, inclusive opportunities for all residents of the Pottstown area. And if we're successful in getting to achievement of our purpose and mission, we have these pillars that will contribute to that to get us to our visionary state, couldn't get that out, sorry, that area residents are living vibrant, healthy lives. So where the foundation is seeking to fund is in these two key pillars of developing youth potential, which we'll spend a lot of time on today because that's why we're here, or promoting equitable health and wellness. They also have an engagement strategy, which is that collaborating for a healthier future. So if we take this and kind of rotate it on its head to get to what we'll call more of a logic model, yes, that's all a results framework really is a logic model. So, you know, up top we have our purpose, sorry, my brain stopped for a second, and our mission attaches to our purpose, and in between, on the other side, we have our vision. So if we're successful in achieving our purpose and mission, we'll get to our visionary state. The pillars that will get us there are the ones we just spoke about. But as we begin to layer in the next layer, we can't stop at just the pillars. We need to find how we're engaging. So the two on the outer sides are the funding strategies, why we're here today, right? To make sure that we're investing in programs that contribute to the foundation's mission and vision. Stopping here is where most people on the funder side fail, because they're like, hey, this is what we're doing. We need to go further. We need a definition. What does it look like if we're successful at each of these pillars? So we get to a desired impact or end state. Again, pretty visionary for each of these areas, and we're going to layer in as we go further. But let's take a look. Promoting equitable health and wellness. If we're successful, what would a desired end state be? And it's that all community members are benefiting from equitable access to spaces, services, programs, and resources, enabling them to embrace a healthy lifestyle. Note the words equitable, all community members. On the other side, the one we're going to dive into a lot today, developing youth potential, it's that community youth are healthy, learning and thriving now and in the future. Again, desired end state. If we're successful, you should see both of those desired end states contributing to the visionary state. The center is that engagement piece, how the staff at the foundation engages with a diverse set of actors in the community to make sure that, you know, we're actively learning, working, and supporting all residents for a healthy future. We're going to spend the rest of our time together talking about the right-hand side, or the developing youth potential pillar. Again, pretty lofty, developing youth potential. What does that mean? What are they looking to fund? How are they going to, how is my program going to contribute to that? And that's where we get a little bit more clear about, okay, what do we mean by developing youth potential? And there are three critical program areas where the foundation is seeking to invest. Early childhood development, so that 0 through 5 age group, and making sure that it's not focused just on the kids, but on the expecting and new parents of the kids, so that they have the appropriate tools and resources to ensure the development of young children. Core to the foundation, as many of you know, is their school programs, K through 12. And it's about integrating best practices to promote wellness as a core component of school culture and student achievement. So most of you know the foundation's been up to this for a while. Again, we're just getting a little bit more granular and looking at some behavioral changes that we'll talk to in a minute. And then youth preparedness, so that after school learning, that summer school learning, that out of the institution of the school building learning, and it's really focused on cognitive, social, and emotional skills to succeed in life. Because if you remember, our visionary state overall was that community youth are healthy, thriving, and learning now and in the future. So again, bringing that health concept together. So those are the three areas. So that's where we start to layer this in. So as we go into the next level, we need to think about who we're seeking to work with, who we're seeking to impact, who's going to get us to these end states, and what end states do we have for each of these program areas. So again, building out that logic model. So in early childhood development, as I mentioned earlier, we're working to with and funding and investing in expecting mothers, parents and caregivers of young children, and the children themselves, so that ultimately through the work that we're investing in, that our young children are cognitively, socially, physically, and emotionally ready to enter school. On the school programs, we again have a bunch of different stakeholders who we'll be partnering with, who are investing in to get to our desired end state. And that's the institutions, the educational institutions themselves. It's the support unit for the students, right? The teachers and families. And it's the students themselves, ultimately getting students to be active, healthy, and thriving academically. And on the after school or out of school programming, we're still looking at that same age group of K through 12, and we want to make sure that they have the cognitive, social, and emotional skills to manage and thrive in their daily lives and in the future. So you can see we're getting more and more clear about who we want to invest in to get our youth, our youth to the end states that we've said. And then you see that arrow in the center where we talk about investment types. So let's talk about that. An investment is obviously the grant that we're giving out. I say investment very intentionally because a grant is to bestow. An investment is to invest in your organization to get to a desired end state. And again, to get to some social change or social impact. So let's take a look at the three types of investments that the foundation is willing to support. First and foremost is systemic reform. If you think about this is that big macro level change. We're trying to influence, local policy, state policy, maybe even national policy. We're getting the field voice, the community voice to come together to maybe affect that policy, to make sure that we understand the needs. Or maybe we're developing a new best practice in delivering services. So again, macro level, usually longer term change, but very, very important to learning and to changing the spaces. They also are willing to invest in your organizations, in your your grantee organization capacity. So giving you investments to help you improve or increase your capacity to get to organizational results. There are specific type of capacities that they're willing to support, and I'll share those with you in a minute. But this is really about doing something in your organization to increase your existing capacity. And finally, the one that most of us know and or a lot of times seeking funding for is our direct service or program support. So that's the support of your existing programs to make sure that community members and the community and its members are benefiting and getting to some type of result. So when I say result, they look different for each of these. So let's take a look at what that means. So if we look at systemic reform, I said earlier, that's that macro level change, developing policy, getting policy enacted, developing a best practice. And as I said, that's a long-term change. If anybody does this kind of work, you'd be lucky sometimes to get a policy enacted within 5 years, say. So what we look for there in terms of achievement, in terms of that result, if you think about my food bank example earlier, is long-term. Why are you doing this? And what will be different for who and by when? So if I'm going to enact a policy, it's going to benefit this many community members in this way by this time frame. However, because we know this is long-term and most grants are a 1-year time frame, we need to know what you're up to during the current grant period. And we'll give you some continuums in a second to show you that. But hey, maybe you're getting the community voice involved in that policy development, and you're starting the writing of it to get leaders involved. Again, long-term ultimate achievement while you're setting forth to do it. What are you using the funds in the current grant term to accomplish? Capacity building, again, is about your organization specifically, and these are projects that we're investing in to increase or improve your existing organizational capacity to get to results. So we're going to look for specific results for these as well. It's usually in terms of effectiveness or efficiency. So we'll get a little bit more granular on that in a second. And finally, the programmatic or direct service grants. And really there we're looking for something to be different for those that you serve, or if it was a conditional such as the built environment, and promoting in the other pillar, we're looking for a change in condition within the environment. So for that being said, we have now developed a set of tools, a set of indicators, or as we like to call it, a continuum of change that have indicators underneath them to get to the desired end state so that we can monitor progress. And this is usually where I get, what do you mean? You're going to tell us how to run our program? And the answer is no. If you think about my example of the food bank and moving from activities to behavioral change, that's what we're focused on, or conditional change in the environment. And it happens along a continuum of change. We present it linear. We know it's not linear because we're dealing with human behavior. But overall, we believe there's a path that people take. And that first path is, just creating an awareness or an initial connection with a community member about an issue, about what's going on, about your services. And as they start to sign on and they're starting to participate, you see some active participation on their part, usually leads to some kind of initial improvement in that second box. And if they continue on, if they continue down the path, we hope to get to some kind of lasting change or transformation on their part so that we can get to a desired end state. So we're going to talk about each of these now in terms of, what we're looking for by investment type. And then when we get to direct service, we'll talk about each of the program areas specifically, because those become very targeted for the foundation. So as we talk about it from the systemic reform part, we're looking at the continuum here and the connect. We need to identify, what is the issue and define it so that we can start developing a best practice. Once the practice is developed, it needs to be disseminated. We need to get practitioners to agree to adopt it, to test it. And ultimately, this best practice will need to be brought to scale, and additional best practitioners will need to be able to build their skills to use it and institutionalize it within organizations. So again, new service delivery, new practice delivery, long-term macro level change. Similarly, if we're bringing in a collaborative to look at something delivery and bringing some kind of new policy or practice within the community, again, you need to identify the need, identify opportunities to bring people together, coming into the collaborative, making sure that we have the voice of the community and it's integrated into how we're going to define to solve the problems and implement planning, agree on the results that we're looking to get to, and ultimately implementing a new practice or policy. So usually this collaborative is in support of development of a new best practice or a policy achievement. It kind of underlines the other two. Ultimately, we want to get to improved results for those that we serve. Similarly, advocacy becomes that policy underlying, so that we would be looking for developing policies to improve results. So same kind of situation, we need to identify the issues or the gaps in the community. We need to agree to work together to address them. We need to create an action plan, moving them into proposing changes and getting support from decision makers, ultimately getting policies enacted to improve the lives of those in the community. Again, macro level change. Shifting now to your organizational level change, and if you need to get something done within your organization, build a new capacity, you need to first identify what that is, right? Where there's a gap and why there's a need. And we're going to go into some questions around that when we get to the application part that will get you thinking about why now, why will this help your organization now? As we move into the improve section, now that you know and have defined the need, you need to start putting it into practice. You need to identify what systems, policies, materials, training even that has to happen to put this into place. You need to implement it and demonstrate that you can successfully use it, maybe make tweaks and change. And then ultimately, usually when we're putting in a grantee capacity, as I said earlier, it's about efficiency or effectiveness. Efficiency is thought of in terms of reducing costs to run your program, or maybe bringing in more revenue because of the capacity that you built, or effectiveness, deepening the results for those you serve. And we'll talk specifically about how we quantify those in a moment. Now moving on to program support. So really generic thinking on it. Okay, we need to have a participant get an awareness or make an initial connection with your organization, with your program. As they participate, we hope to see them getting actively involved and see some initial improvement, and ultimately them confirming that they've changed the bit. You can see the difference in that. So now here is where we get really granular, and I ask you kind of just to pay attention if it is your program area, because what you'll start to see when we go through the application is these become the quantitative data points that we ask you to align with. And we know, as I said earlier, change is not linear. We don't expect every program to track every one of these, but this is the path that we would invest in changing expecting mothers in the ECD area. So again, first and foremost, these expecting mothers need to sign up. They need to be aware of your program and then sign up for your program. Once they're in, perhaps they're getting some kind of screening, they're coming to some kind of training, they're coming to some kind of info session, and they're becoming aware of prenatal regimens and infant development. Maybe we're doing some additional screening for depression or substance abuse. Coming into approved, now they're actively becoming engaged. That you can see if their screens have identified them. Now we're giving them some resources to deal with either their addiction, their depression, etc. Ultimately, we want to see that these expecting mothers are having better supports in place to deal with their issues, so that the young children that they're bringing into the world can benefit. So that's one population or stakeholder group within the early childhood development area. Next, we think about the overall parents and caregivers. Usually the infants are now born, and we're working with that population of 0 to 5. Same concept. They need to know that this program exists. We need to get them to join. We need to get them to get to an understanding of the benefits of a nurturing environment on development. Taking, along the journey, bringing an increased awareness, committing to interacting with their child, ultimately demonstrating some kind of emotional connection with their child and seeing a benefit to the young children. So again, if you're in the early childhood development area on the call, think about, your program. Do you run in any of these continuums? What do you look at now? And this is specifically about the young children. We need to get them enrolled in an quality ECD program. Perhaps we're assessing their current cognitive, social, and emotional skills, getting them to attend on a regular basis. Sometimes, as we know, it could be a challenge, but we want to make sure that we're monitoring that. Maybe we test them again, and the program teacher, the person delivering the program is watching, and we can see that they're demonstrating age-appropriate developmental milestones. And you see that we ultimately want to get them ready to be enter the school system, the kindergarten school system, cognitively, socially, and physically and emotionally. So again, if you're in this area, think about these behavioral changes and think about your activities within your program and what you can potentially monitor. Moving into our K through 12 program, again, if you recall, we had a couple different stakeholder groups there. First being the school systems themselves, the educational institutions. And here you can see, we're looking at, the school system becoming aware of the benefits of health and wellness. A lot of you guys have been doing this for a little bit of time, so maybe you're already there, but the next step is making sure that you have the right programs, the right policies and strategies to address the health and wellness skills of that need to be implemented to contribute to academic success. And once you identify those gaps or what you want to change, you of course are going to have to get some activity going of getting resources, getting approval from the boards, etc. You then have to start making the change and implementing the evidence-based health and wellness programs such as the school wellness checklist. Ultimately getting down the continuum to confirming and seeing a difference in the students within your school institutions. So again, if you're coming in and you're a school institution and this is where you're focused, think about what you would see alignment with. Obviously, if a health and wellness program is being implemented, we also need the other support system beyond the actual school system to participate. So we need teachers and families involved. And you can see it's a very, very similar continuum at the upfront, because we're getting them to become aware of the needs, getting an understanding, integrating it into the academic curriculum or into their daily lives at home. Ultimately, seeing an increase of activity and wellness for the students. So again, who is your program going to directly work with? Is it the institution? Is it the teachers and families? Or maybe it's, a direct service that it's in the schools already, and you've already integrated the health and wellness programs, and now we're looking at the actual students benefiting and we're monitoring their success. So we need the students in the school, we need them to become aware again. We need to get some kind of assessment, of their current activity. Again, attending class, we know that the body-mind connection is important, and getting them into this classroom on a consistent basis is important. We need to check in and make sure that they're starting to increase their levels of social, emotional, and physical and nutritional well-being, linking it and hopefully seeing that link that we know is there between wellness and academic performance, so that we start to see some kind of improvement, ultimately getting them to the end state of them actively being active, healthy, and thriving, and being able to demonstrate the appropriate skills. So again, where are you if you're coming in and applying for a grant on the school programs program area? Who are you working with? Who are you looking to change? You may have multiple. And then finally, on the youth development, again, if you think about it, very, very similar to the previous one, but now it's really focused on kind of that social and emotional competencies, and you can see they're defined in the lower left corner, but it's getting them into a program, assessing their competencies, increasing their awareness, developing a plan so that they can succeed, seeing some kind of improvement or learning new skills to address one of the deficits that they may have had, committing to introducing a healthy or active behavior, ultimately getting the educator, the child, to confirm a benefit to them. So again, think about the programs that you're running. As I said earlier, we don't expect everybody to be able to track every single one of these. And we also would never expect every child to get through the entire continuum, because that's not how human behavior works. A lot of information in a short time. So I'm going to pause for just a second and just see if there's anything, any questions coming in that we need to address. If not, now we're going to go into the meat of the subject, the content, and what I think will be the most valuable for you. And that's how this framework attaches to the application. But I'll pause for just a second. Just see if there's any questions. Okay, remember the chat button and the Q&A buttons are there for you. Beth, thank you for your question. Yes, we should have all said that at the beginning. All of this content will be available to you guys. We'll be sending the slides as well as the recording will be made available to you. Apologies for not stating that up front, but thank you for that and the reminder. Okay, so we're gonna jump in and think about that big framework and now narrow it down to how the application has been structured, so that you can think about how you go forth and apply for a potential investment from the foundation. And you have already started to do that. If you think about the LOI, the letter of inquiry, you've already started to think about, okay, where is my program contributing to, which program area? From there, you also probably started thinking about this, because, it changes our narrative questions and what you're looking for achievement. But you started to think about, during the LOI, the type of investment that you're seeking. Is it that macro level change that you're trying to get to of policy or practice development? Are you needing some support for your organization to increase your organization's performance? Or is it, hey, we need funds to support our programs so that we can get a benefit to the community members? So you've already started to align with the foundation's framework based on the LOI. Now, as we go deeper into the application, if you think back to one of my first slides when I talked about those 4 questions, that's where we're going to focus. We need to think about the who, what, how, and when of your programs. So who your work or what your work will impact if we're talking about the built environment. What impact will you have on them and by when? What will be different because of your programming? How will you get there? What are the key elements of your delivering these services? And then that verification. What are you using to know you've succeeded? As we think about these narratives, we also need to think about those continuums in terms of data. So let's build it out along the journey. If we start with the who, and we take each of the types of investments, the who in systems change is the field. So we want to focus there on the type of change that we're trying to implement and what it would mean to the field. So if we enact a policy, what it will mean for the program area that you're that you're supporting through the field. So what will it mean for schooling in the Pottstown area? What will it mean for early childhood development? In grantee capacity, the who is your organization, because you're putting in something to improve your organization's capacity to get to results. And what we'll ask you to do is focus on the type of capacity, and I'll show you in a second those that the foundation is willing to support. And by putting this new capacity in, what will your organization be able to achieve? And obviously the who for direct service is who are you serving, who's coming through your program, but beyond that, tell us about them. Tell us about the barriers they're facing. So let's look at the direct application questions for each of these that will show us that level of change. And then we'll give you an example of how it potentially could be answered. So in systems change, very quickly, we say right up front, okay, what is the population or place you propose to help with this project? By putting this in, what will this mean to the field? Will it improve school systems? Will it improve social emotional learning because you're developing a new best practice for delivery? And then we ask you for the type of change. So pretty standard, pretty straightforward. On grantee capacity, again, as I said earlier, we've gone through and we've identified the types of capacity that the foundation is willing to support. You can see there, they range from staff and board development to putting together some kind of new strategic plan or direction setting, to perhaps you guys doing measurement and evaluation model within your organization. Of course, we have a focus on diversity, equity, inclusion, because that's super important to the foundation. Once you identify the type of capacity, we ask you to describe it, but ultimately also why is now? What makes now the right time for you to embark upon putting this capacity in? And we'll give you an example in a second of this, but let's look at the direct service version. You can see here, if you recall, the who is actually the participants of your program. But we want to know about them. What are their challenges or opportunities that your program is going to solve for them? What barriers do the majority of your participants face? And based on those barriers, what percentage do you think have a high level of those barriers versus a low barriers? Gives us an indicator of the population that you're working with. So if we break this down and start chunking it down and thinking about potential responses in a very quick snippet way, what the answer could be. So in systems change, perhaps we're working in the school programs and our focus is the teacher and family stakeholder group. We want to get to that collaborative level. And here you can see, we want to engage local parents and families on the importance of involvement and participation in the successful implementation of wellness policies. Most specifically, we want to make sure that their voice is included and their views are included into what we're doing. So again, we know who we're working with, we want to engage them, and we want to make sure that their voice is heard as we're developing these policies within the school system. In the grantee capacity, not surprising, the measurement person said, hey, our youth development organization is going to put together an impact measurement and evaluation for our program. And what we're going to do is we're going to engage a consultant to help us do that. But really why we're doing this is because we have new leadership that's really supportive of it. And a lot of funders like Pottstown are asking for data. So how do we make sure that we understand data? So just thinking about the why now contributes to a big voice as to what you're up to. And on direct service, all right, we're in the school system, and we're looking directly at the students, which is great, but we get clearer. We want to go into our primary schools and the 3 lowest performing school systems to put our program in. And this is the challenges that these kids are facing. 45% of them are living in single parent income homes. 30% don't have access to 3 meals a day. 25% don't have English as their primary language. So just telling us what is the makeup of the people that are going to come through your program. So that's the who. From the who, we need to know what. We know who you're working with. Now we know what. We want to know the what, or what will be different for them. And if you recall the earlier slide, in systems change, it's ultimately what you're trying to achieve as the what, but we also need to know, okay, what are the immediate funds going to invest in to help you accomplish during this grant period? For the grantee capacity, again, as I keep saying, it's about what will your organization do more effectively or more efficiently. And then if you think about the direct service, it directly attaches to those continuums. What will be different? How will the behaviors change for the kids, for the expecting mothers? So let's take a look at taking our example that we've already started through that. So first and foremost, in systems change, we ask very specifically a question: what do you anticipate the results being once it's fully enacted, once the system change has been made? And by knowing that first question, thinking about ultimately how many will benefit, and when do you envision the best practice being brought to scale, the policy being enacted? And then you can see right underneath it, we know this is macro. Tell us what you're going to do to get towards that achievement during the current grant period. Maybe you're at the end, and maybe you're getting there and you're getting something enacted. But you could see we also then link the two by showing you the continuums and telling you, okay, for the type of systemic reform that you're looking to build, tell us what you're going to work on during this grant period, by telling us the checkbox along the continuum, so we can see where you are, and you can see how the narrative should now tie to our continuum so we can attach it all together. If we look at grantee capacity, again, you remember you had to select a type of capacity, and because we're focused on efficiency or effectiveness, efficiency being that concept of, hey, we're going to do something better, reduce costs, we're going to increase our revenue because we're going to be able to diversify the sources coming in. Effectiveness being that, we're focused on how our programs will ultimately benefit those that we're serving. So maybe we can increase the number served because of the capacity. Maybe we can get further along the continuum and increase the results that we serve. Or maybe we're just going to become efficient in terms of time. We're getting the same level of results, but we're getting our participants to those results in a faster time because of an adjustment, because of the capacity that we're building. So once you start thinking about that and saying, okay, it's going to be, we're focused on the effectiveness, and we want to increase number served and decrease, and attach to that, decrease the time to get to results, we'll start asking you for, okay, what does that look like in terms of numbers? How many people in that case, and the decrease and increase, would benefit, and when do you expect the capacity to be fully in place? On the direct service, again, these are the continuums. They're just presented vertically instead of horizontally. But if you think about them now in terms of how they're written now, okay, number of expecting mothers served, and then of those, how many become, and they're the exact same stops along the continuum, so that how many become aware of the regimens, how many get screened. So we start to think about these now in terms of quantifiable changes. So same thing here for the school systems and youth development. The school systems, the education one is a little bit more like the educational institutions is a little bit more like the policy stuff. So because we're talking about usually one institution, a district even, or a physical brick and mortar building that's housing a specific school, we want to know where you're going to get along the continuum there. The rest, we're talking about human behavior. So what that looks like in the actual application is, you can see, expecting mothers, how many will be served? Of those, how many will achieve this? Students, number served. Of those, how many will achieve this? Here's the difference. Educational institutions, again, where are you going to get to through this grant period? Think of it almost like a systems change because it's a bigger level of programmatic support. So hopefully that, and there's the youth development similar to the others. So hopefully you can start to see, where the narrative, we're going to start attaching data points to it. So if we think about our example that we started to build out, we have defined, who are our program area, and specifically our stakeholders within that program area, the type of investment. We've gone through and we've talked about the who. Now let's quantify the what. In our school programs, you can see if we're successful, all district-wide health and wellness policies will be approved by parent-family representation. However, that's probably a couple years out. In the short term, here's what we're going to do. So those are directly, kind of thinking about the continuum. We're going to identify the need. We're going to, maybe do some focus groups so that we can integrate the family voice and agree on what success would look like. In our grantee capacity, we know we're going to put this new framework in to measure our success. And we think by doing that, we'll be able to identify 3 new funders whose programs align with our work and bring in another $75,000 into our programs annually. And also, basically we'll be able to leverage this to start deepening our results in the future. In the direct service, we knew that we were going into the 3 lowest performing primary schools. So that's about 3,500 students. And of those, here's what we'll be able to achieve. 98% or 3,430 of them will become aware of the benefits of health and wellness. 93% of the 3,500 will attend class on a consistent basis. And you can see the ultimate, the deepest we'll get to is that 78% confirm some kind of school performance. Again, not expecting you to get along each of the steps along the continuum, but you can start to see where they integrate. We then ask you to think about all this and get to a concrete result statement for your program so that we can see that you understand achievement, and that's what we're focused on. So if you see here, a result statement, could just say for that 3 schools that, hey, we're going to do kind of this pointed, by the end of the school year, of the 3,500, 27, 30 or 78% will show improvement, and 82% will achieve CDC health standards. So that one isn't a direct call of the continuum, but it's important to you guys so that you can call it out and show achievement. We need to see alignment with the foundation's framework, but we also know there's other data points that you're tracking. If we look at a specific, the deepest level, we call that a single focus. It could just be here. We're getting those 2,800 to achieve the CDC fitness standards. Perhaps you have so much going on that you want to talk about it in terms of a menu option. Out of the 3,500, 28 will show improvement in at least 2 of these following ways so that we see that you're aligning. So again, just trying to think about the achievement, how it's contributing to the foundation's framework. So we've talked about the who, the what. Now let's go into, oh, forgot about this slide, sorry about that. So now you can see here we've taken our example and gotten to those concrete result statements. And I'll pause for a minute. You guys can read them without me talking at you, but it's just taking each of those examples and getting to a concrete, specifically in systems change. You can see we're not going to get the policy enacted until 2027, but we can also very quickly see, hey, it's going to benefit 10,000 students, but in this current grant term by the end of June, we'll have identified the top 3 health and wellness gaps that we need to address that will ultimately contribute to the benefit of those 10,000 students. You can see here in grantee capacity, we're focused on making sure that we're bringing in new funds, increasing our efficiency, and then ultimately looking at that effectiveness side in the future years, because we can start to learn from the data that we're collecting, what's working and what's not. And then our school performance, our student performance is the one that we had on the previous slide. So we have the who, we have the what, and we have a concrete goal for our what by having a result statement. Now we need to get to the how. What is your program up to? How are you delivering it to get to this result statement? And there is where we talk about, okay, what are these key elements to your success? And this is the one that I think trips up most people. We don't need to know every single activity, but what are those major buckets? So if you think about the youth development, a youth development program that's aimed at ensuring risky behaviors and aimed at reducing risky behaviors and improving student performance, maybe we need to, every student has to have an aptitude test so that we know how to develop their plan. Maybe they have to, you have to have a one-on-one guidance person. Maybe there is a component that's mentoring or training. Maybe there's a peer group, and that's critical to how you deliver your program. Again, not telling you how you're delivering your program, but just want to understand the major buckets that are critical to you getting to those results. So if we, again, take our example, we have our who, we have our what, we have our investment types, and we start layering in the types of things that are critical for us. Again, here I've just bulleted them. We'll give you a full example of what this looks like built out in a second, but you can see, in systems change, maybe we have to do some requirements gathering. Maybe we have to do some focus groups to understand the family voice and do maybe a bigger survey out. Focus groups can only handle 100 people. Maybe we have to survey all parents in the area. Maybe we should be looking at ourselves compared to other communities and benchmarking ourselves. And ultimately, we need to get to some kind of approval by a cross-sector population. In the youth development, the grantee capacity, we need to make sure that we're doing an RFP to retain the right partner to help us get to a framework. Maybe we need them, obviously we need to develop it, but maybe we need to set some specific targets and goals. We need to get buy-in by leadership of the board. And then once that's all done, key to implementing a framework, evaluation framework at an organization is making sure it's integrated into all organizational policies, job descriptions, and performance reviews. Ultimately, we need to launch it. So those are the critical components to get to our what. Similarly, on direct service, again, if we're in the school programs, perhaps we need to make sure that we have the appropriate level of guidance and counseling for our students, specifically the students that we're working with in these 3 lowest performing schools. Maybe we need to ensure that, they're getting some kind of ESL programming and socialization if we have a high majority that are not English speaking. Maybe we need to make sure that they're having after school programming. Maybe because we know the benefit of nutrition and academic performance, we need to make sure that they have breakfast and lunch options, knowing 30% are not getting 3 meals a day. But what are those critical components? From there, the next step of the how becomes, okay, we have all these components, we know how the program operates, but what are the steps that you're going to take to get you there? If I do this action, it will enable achievement at this level by this period. So if I look at it, if I conduct outreach within the community at all the schools, then we get at least 25 new parents or caregivers coming into our program. Again, fictitious example, just wanted to get the concept of if we do this, our goal or milestone will be that we have at least 25 new parents or caregivers signing up, and we want to achieve that by this date. So what that looks like in the application is just that. If I do this, the project element, the goal or milestone will be this, and the timing that we seek to achieve that. Ultimately, each one of these critical steps and milestones or project elements and milestones will attach to the overall results. We need to see the alignment between what you're saying here and that ultimate result statement, as well as the data. The foundation requires at least 3. I think we have room to give up to 5. The other part that attaches to the how, and you can see this is the guts of the application, the narrative parts of the application. So we know from the how, what the key elements are. We know about the plan to put those key elements in place and see how they get attached to that result statement, that impact. But there are other things that are underlying it. We also know that, leadership and who's managing the project is important. So we want to hear about who that person or persons are. We also know that some of you also partnered and have intermediaries that are critical to delivering the services. Who are they? And ultimately, we add in the questions, okay, we see the path you're taking. We know that most funders fund for 1 year. How do you plan to continue to sustain these results past the grant? So that's the how. Finally, before we go into some tools that we have for you, we have to talk about the when. And this is, again, something I want to be really clear about. We're not looking for you, even though my example was about putting a measurement and evaluation framework in a grant as a grantee capacity. We're not looking for you to do that. The how is really a verification method. And most times you guys already have some method. It's just switching it on its head from activity to results. But think about the tools that you're using currently. Do you have case management notes? Do you have guidance calendar notes? Are you interacting with the teachers? So there's observations by staff. Maybe you're surveying some of the students or the expecting mothers. So you have some self-reported behaviors. We want you to think about the tools you already have and let us know what you're using to validate that if you're stating you're going to get to this level of impact, this is how we're going to verify it. So you can see if we built out our example, in system change, having the local leaders publicly come out and support your initiative. You have a defined action plan that's been approved by an outside expert. For the youth development, the grantee capacity, having those 3 funder agreements in place by the end of this year, that's a very pointed level of verification. And on the students, you can see, we have data on their physical and emotional well-being because we test at the beginning of each school year, and at the end, we monitor performance during the current school year and have the ability to compare it to the prior. We have the teacher doing some assessments, and perhaps we're putting a student survey in to ask them about, their perspective. So some tools that we have in place. Again, we ask it as a narrative question. I bulleted here just to give you the types of examples of what you could use. I'm sure you guys have more extensive ways of verifying than my little fictitious example. So we've now talked about the who, what, how, and when. We've talked about that alignment to attach it to the data, but we all know that my examples have been just bullets to get to a slide. So if we take each of these bullets and maybe start to put in what you guys do best and talk about your program and think about how to explain it so that the foundation sees these bullets, these who, what, how, and when, in a narrative, perhaps we start to really get the level of narrative that needs to be there. You'll see that the green is showing all of those key points that I was talking about. We know who we're working with in that first level, the 3 lowest performing elementary schools and 3,500 students that are attending. That's who we're aiming to change. And of them, this is what we're going to achieve. You can see right there, same concept, that result statement, really clear. Critical to our success are these 4 components, and we talk about each of them, about why they're critical and what's needed to ensure success to get us to that level of achievement. And this is how we're going to monitor it. You can see the pre and post assessment tests. Teaching staff will track each student's progress on a monthly basis. Again, completely fictitious example, but just wanting to show how it all comes together as you're filling out the application. And as the foundation is reading, they can see a direct path to impact. When we talk about the direct path to impact, always remember we do attach data to that. So that's the narrative. You can see here we have the school program continuum. And as I said earlier, not every program is going to track every indicator. And again, we know because we're dealing with human behavior, not every one of the 3,500 students is going to achieve the same level of success. But you can see how the narrative now gets attached to the data. Oops. And then from the elements perspective, each of those elements would get attached to the work plan. If we do this, we'll achieve this, and by this time frame. When we think about data as it goes to the investment types, again, direct services, direct quantifiable community members that you're serving, you can see. In capacity building and systems change, it's about how far along the continuum you'll get, and some quantifiable number. In this case, on capacity, we were trying to increase revenue, and ultimately, in the future year, we talked about additional community members to benefit. And in the collaboratives, you can see it's about who ultimately will benefit and when that full blown collaborative success would get to achievement. So again, linking the two together. Coming into the tail end of this, we want to point out another couple critical components of the application for you to think about, because it's all tied into kind of the story that you're trying to tell, the impact story, who you're looking to change and how. And that starts with organizational achievement. So in that first section, you can see we're focused on what you've achieved in the past, the challenges you face and how you've addressed them, and what you've learned by managing through all this, because it's not only that past performance is an indicator of future success, sometimes challenges and what we didn't achieve, but more importantly, what we learned from what we didn't achieve tells a really important story. The other side that's important, obviously, as I said at the beginning of this, because of what the foundation is focused on and why it's important because of what's going on in the community, is equity. So we're going to ask how your organization is making progress to become a more diverse and inclusive organization, and what progress you've been making. The other area from a data perspective to think about is our demographics. We look at a couple of different ways of looking at those that will benefit from your programs or from the support that the foundation is investing in you. We need to obviously know the geographic makeup, because the foundation has a very targeted area that they support. But now we're starting to think about the people that will benefit because of your programs, the community members overall that will benefit. So percentage of folks within your service recipients that are marginalized and under specific categories, the demographics of those you serve, both from an ethnic, gender, and age makeup. Pretty standard stuff that I think most funders are asking for, but we wanted to be clear and make sure that you knew all of that. Finally, before I turn it over to Jill to talk through the timeline and we then open it up for Q&A, we're not just throwing this over the fence. Yes, I mentioned earlier that the slides in this recording will be available, but the foundation wants to do everything that they can to support you. So a couple of tools that they've made available that will be available on the website, as well as I believe emailed out, is a results workbook. So this is a tool just to help you think about how to get to that concrete statement. And it'll take you through the who, what, how, and when. It will show you how to create it, and it by investment type. Just a way to get the thinking. We have some examples in there. From there, we've also developed a workbook to get you thinking about the if I do this action, if we do this, then we'll achieve this contributing to getting to our ultimate impact by this time. So again, just a tool to help you think through it, because we know we're asking these questions in a little bit of a different way. Finally, some of you may have already signed up, but the foundation has invested in you by providing technical assistance. So what that looks like would be 25 slots that they've agreed to fund to work with myself or somebody in my organization to get to look at your application to get you tight enough around how it's aligned with the foundation's framework and what you're looking to achieve. So we would do a 45-minute call to talk through it. But before we would have the call, I'd ask for this minimum information. Usually it's, you start your application, you can email me a draft so I can see it, and we'll talk about it, answer any questions, and then afterwards I'll send you written feedback about how to tighten your application as it gets to aligning with the foundation's framework and getting deep enough into results. So if you haven't already signed up and you're interested, the link for that was the Calendly link in your invite to come to this, or your invite to apply for a full application, and I'm sure it'll come in the communication after this. I will say that they are booking up. I think probably almost 10 of them are booked up already. So if you're interested, make sure that you get that, and make sure that the day prior you get me some key information so that I'm grounded in what you're up to. And now I'm going to stop. You're going to hear a different voice. So I'm going to turn it over to Jill to talk through all the timeline and next steps and what you can expect through this process.
Thanks, Michelle. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. As you can see, we're sharing here on the slide where we are at in the spring grant cycle. We have moved out of the LOI round, and the application is now open in the system. We're here today at step 5, these information sessions. As Michelle mentioned, those one-on-one application assistance meetings do begin next week. Yeah, you should have received that link to sign up in your invitation to apply notice, but I will also be resending that information in a follow-up email. Applications will be due on April 1st. And then you will receive the foundation's decision the week of May 31st. For 12-month grants, an interim report will be due on January 15th of 2023, and a final report due on July 15th, 2023. Grants that are approved for a different amount of time other than that 12-month period will have a slightly different reporting schedule, but that would be communicated when you receive the grant award letter. And like Michelle said, we'll be sending all this information to you in a follow-up email as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Jill. So again, I'm going to come on video now and hopefully encourage you guys to ask questions. This is about you guys getting what you all need to be successful in being awarded a grant from the foundation. So use the Q&A, use the chat, myself and or somebody from the foundation will answer depending on what the question is. I know you guys are out there. There's a lot of you. Again, remember that this deck will be shared as you're thinking about your questions, as well as the recording. John, where on the website will these tools be found?
I'll drop the link in the chat. They're in the grant making section under results framework, but I'll provide the direct link right here in the chat now.
Wonderful. Do you guys see alignment? Do you see how you can start thinking about behavioral change as a result of the activities that your program is delivering? Thanks, John. Quiet group. remember again, if you want some support in making sure that you're being as clear as possible, to sign up for one of those TA calls as the foundation staff pops on to check in as well. But remember to sign up. Like I said, they're starting to fill up.
All right, well, I guess if no one has any questions, I'll go ahead and close this out here. Thanks again for joining us. Like I said, there's the link in the chat there. So a lot of the resources are already on the webpage. I will follow up. Jill's going to send an email with a link to those resources, slide deck, video, and all that's going to be posted on the grant making section of our website as well. So that will close us out. Thanks again for joining us, and have a great day.